Hello YouTube, my name is Sarah if you didn't know, and today's situation is going to be talking about my debt journeys. I am 24 years old and at this point in my life I am debt free. I kind of just wanted to talk about how I got into debt, how I normalized my debt, and then how I worked to get out. So this may be a bit of a long video. I actually did a Dave Ramsey debt free stream, which is like kind of embarrassing, but Dave Ramsey and his radio show were a big part of my debt journey. If you do enjoy videos about money and you end up enjoying this one, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment, and check out some of my other videos. I wanted to quickly say that I'm simply sharing my story of how I got into debt and how I got out. I am not a financial advisor. I'm honestly not that good with money. I am simply just sharing my story with debt and my journey with it. And if you have a different experience, I would love to hear about it, but my experience does not change your experience or invalidate your experience the same way that your experience doesn't invalidate mine. So you know, money's sometimes a weird topic, but let's keep that in mind as we watch. Let's get into it. I want to start off and talk about how I was brought up and the topic of money. So I'm going to keep this super brief. I'm the youngest of all of my siblings. My oldest sibling is quite a bit older than me, like 10 plus years older than me. So by the time I was born, he was basically an adult. And so we had very different experiences, even though we have the same parents, growing up financially. Because when I was growing up, my parents weren't rich by any means, but I never felt less than anybody. I felt like I really did get a lot of just the regular stuff. Like I had a cell phone, I had an iPod, I went snowboarding, I went on a couple of vacations. I felt like my parents really gave me everything that they could, which was a little bit different than my brother's experience because they had a lot less money when he was born. So that's kind of what I'll say about my parents, is that they provided well for me. Like it wasn't exorbitant or anything like that, but they provided well for me. And going from not having as much money when my brother was born to having more money when I was born, they were obviously going through their own financial journey and learning as much as I am today. That being said, they didn't talk about money very much. So I know that was a super brief backstory of kind of my childhood, but obviously a lot of that is not fully my story, so I don't want to share too much about my parents and whatnot. They gave me everything they could. When I turned 18, at that time, I had no debt. I had a little bit of savings because I'd been working since I was 14. By then, I had my third job, I think. So I started off at Little Caesars Pizza. I was a gymnastics coach before I was 18, and then I started at another restaurant before I was 18. So by the time I was 18, I had 3 jobs, and I was making what felt like a lot of money. When I started, minimum wage was probably like $8 where I lived, and by the time I was 18, I think minimum wage was maybe like $10, something like that. So I felt like I was making a lot of money, which made me think, well, you get to also spend a lot of money. So I was a spender. I had spoken to one of my brothers and he suggested that I get a credit card to build credit. And, you know, he suggested maybe a $500 limit, nothing crazy. I should be responsible with it. But in my head, all I thought was free money. So I got my first credit card. The limit was probably $500 and I started to max that out consistently, and I never wanted to pay it off. So around the time that I got my first credit card, I had also just started university. I started university when I was 17 because I have a bit of a later birthday. And the crazy part about being a student, regardless of how old you are, they will give you money. So in Canada, you just kind of go on this website, you apply for loans in the province that you live in, and then you apply for federal loans. So they'll give you the amount of money to cover your tuition for the year that you're in, and then depending on how you fill it out, if you live by yourself, if you pay rent, if you need new computers, textbooks, that type of stuff, you'll get a bit more money. So I remember kind of filling that out to the max and trying to get the most money that they would give me. And again, I'm in the mindset of this is free money, which it's not. By the time I had gotten these loans, I paid my tuition and then I had leftover money and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Mind you, I'm still working as I'm getting all this money, but I'm not saving anything and I'm not paying off any of my debt. And at that time as well, my dad was helping me pay for my university. And so his thought was that I would take out these loans, put them in a savings account, they may get a little bit of interest, and then I'll pay them off. That's not what I wanted to do. I tried to save a little bit of money so that my dad didn't see that I was spending all of it, but obviously he wasn't like watching my bank account all the time because I was an adult, so he never really noticed until later that I'd spent a lot of money. So now that I'm in my second year of university, I go through the process again, get more loans, And at this point, I also get a line of credit because I wanted a new car. My car had died, which I paid like $1,000 for my first car. It had died and I wanted another one. And instead of getting another $1,000, $2,000 car, I wanted like a $20,000 car. So I'm going to lots, I'm like going to all these places trying to get a car, and then I realized they're not gonna give me a car because I'm bad with money. I don't really have a job and I'm just too young. So my dad agrees to co-sign a car for me. It had to be under $10,000, so that was our agreement. So I ended up finding a car. It was around $10,000. My dad co-signed for me. I made every single payment. I was very responsible with that because I understood the gravity that they would take the car away. It would cause my dad problems, but I still had this loan. So now I have student loans for 2 years. I have a car loan and I have a credit card and I have a line of credit. In my third year, after I had increased my credit card limit, it's totally maxed out. I go and get another credit card and continue to do the same thing. So now I have 2 credit cards, car loan, line of credit, 3 years worth of student loans. I'm drowning in debt. But in my head, I was just like, everybody is. Like, everybody has debt. We're all in university. It's fine. I'm still working, mind you. Like, I never stopped working through university, but through that, I continued to have a lot of mental health issues. And again, that stimulated more spending. So as I'm getting all this money and access to these loans and credit cards, and my mental health is not doing that great, I kept spending and spending and spending and spending. By my 4th year, now we're at 4 years worth of student loans, getting as much money as I can from them, not paying anything back. I realized that I'm in a lot of debt. It was like $50,000 of debt, and I still had 1 year of schooling left. Somehow that didn't matter to me. I still continued to spend. And it wasn't until about summer of 2020 where I graduated university, we're in lockdown, and I totaled my debt and it was at like $65,000, like almost $70,000. And I am 22 years old in $70,000 worth of debt, and I was very scared. Being in that much debt at a young age is weird because I kept telling myself that everybody around me was in the same amount of debt. But the thing is, I can't confirm that. I don't know that. I had a couple friends who said they were in debt. I don't know how much debt they were in. And a lot of my other friends actually were not in debt, and they were saving and they were getting ready to move out and looking forward to their future. And I was trapped at home with my parents, which, is fine, but it just wasn't, the best situation for me. I love my parents now, but I wanted to move out and I couldn't. There was no way. I had almost $70,000 in debt. I was working minimum wage jobs. I didn't know what I was gonna do. So I kind of started looking on the internet, how do you pay off debt? And that's when I started having conversations with my siblings and kind of gently picking at how much debt are they in or how did they pay off their debt and that type of stuff. And I started to learn a bit from them, but I still wasn't comfortable fully talking about it. So they still didn't really know how much debt I was in. Then, because I live in Canada during COVID, if your workplace was affected, whether that be through restrictions, COVID outbreaks, all that type of stuff, you could apply to get money from the government that would help support you. And so I worked at the mall at the time and the mall was closed. So I could apply for this because I didn't have enough of an income and my job was affected. The government starts to give me some money. And so now I have this money in my bank and I'm trying to think, like, what should I do with it? And I'm like, I could go on a vacation one day. I could get a new car. I could buy so much clothing. I then looked at my debt and I was like, or you could just pay off your debt and stop being dumb. So this is where I'm at a loss of not being able to find a job after graduating because COVID is ruining everything. I'm trying to work these minimum wage jobs where restrictions are impacting it. My mental health is being impacted. I thought I would be so much further in my life than I was, but because of this debt, I felt like I couldn't do anything. And so as I'm kind of continuing to Google, I found Dave Ramsey. If you don't know about Dave Ramsey, basically he teaches the 7 baby steps of how to become a millionaire. And the first 2 steps are basically just about aggressively finding your way out of debt. I did not explain this very well, but the importance of finding Dave Ramsey was having somebody be so open and honest about debt and have so many stories of how people's lives have changed from paying off their debt, how they did it. So it was just a safe space for me to think about the topic without having to be vulnerable with the people in my life. And so I am watching videos, reading about this, and there's kind of in the finance world, I know very little about this, but In the finance world, there's a bit of a back and forth whether you should follow the avalanche principle, which means that you pay off your highest interest debt and work your way back down. Or Dave Ramsey's snowball effect is paying off your smallest debt regardless of interest and making small wins to get to the biggest debt. I thought high interest makes the most sense, but I like the idea of feeling small wins. So I chose to pick Dave Ramsey's route and I started paying off little things. And the first credit card I paid off, I was like, holy, this is like life-changing. The second credit card I paid off, even better. But then my car loan was still pretty high and I felt like this is gonna take me a while. Luckily, I got a full-time job using my degree that I went to school for, and I was put on a salary job. So I started making way more money than I've ever made in my life, and I continued to work full-time at Lululemon. So at this point in my life, I'm working like 70 to 80 hours a week, and I just told myself, you're gonna do this until your debt is paid off. I had spent probably about 9 months chipping away at my debt, but because I didn't have high expenses, I was making decent progress. But now that I had this new job where I'm making like quite a bit of money, I was just like, that's it, head down, you're paying this off. So this was April 2021, where I just said, by the end of the year, debt's gonna be paid off. Like, that's it. So I'm working as many hours at Lululemon as I can. I'm working at my day job. At this point, I basically never am sleeping because I would wake up at 6 a.m., drive downtown, work 8 to 5, 5 p.m. to about 7, I would nap or eat or do something, and then I worked 8 till 1 or 2 a.m. at Lululemon. Get home, fall asleep, do it again. I was also working weekends at Lululemon, so sometimes I had Saturday off and sometimes I worked 7 days a week. Sometimes these were 12 to 15 hour days. I did that for basically 9 months straight. 2021 was very difficult for me because of that, because on top of being stressed out by debt, stressed out by never sleeping, I also was dealing with mental health stuff, and like everyone else, I was dealing with COVID stuff, but I could not take my foot off the gas because I felt like if I don't do this now, I'm never gonna do it. I will never pay off my debt. As of like mid-December, I had paid off all of my debt, which totaled like $65,000. So it took me about 18 months, 9 months of chipping away at it with minimum wage jobs, selling stuff, and 9 months of what Dave Ramsey calls is gazelle intensity, working as much as you possibly can. Now I just kind of want to talk about what my top tips are for paying off debt. My first tip for paying off debt is that you have to acknowledge why you have debt. For me, I had debt because one, I was a careless university student who took out loans that I shouldn't have taken out. I should have listened to the advice of my dad. I should have been putting the work money that I was making at my jobs to pay for my education, or I should have been working more during the summer. Like, there was so much I could have done to finance my university and the stuff I needed to buy for university versus just taking out as many loans as possible. I also needed to acknowledge that I had mental health problems that were causing me to spend more money than somebody in their right mind may spend. So you need to acknowledge why is it that you're in debt, to begin paying off that debt, but to also stop the debt. Because even if you're paying over and above the minimum payment, but then you're just spending it because you're not addressing the root problem, you're not making any progress. And that's what I was kind of dealing with in that slower 9 months. Acknowledge why you have debt and deal with that problem in tandem with paying off your debt. The second piece of advice that I have for paying off debt is that once I acknowledged what the problem was, I needed an accountability partner, multiple partners, to help me. I told my boyfriend that I had a spending problem and that I needed to spend less time at the mall. I needed his help, if I made online orders and stuff, I needed him to hold me accountable and kind of tell me no. And not everybody's in a position where their spouse may be receptive to that, but I was really lucky that my boyfriend was non-judgmental, non-shameful, and supportive of that. The second accountability partner I had was my brother. I gave my credit card to my brother and I asked him to hold on to it. I deleted it from Apple Pay, from any websites. I deleted it from my phone. I got a new card before I gave it to him, so I didn't know the number to it. I didn't know the PIN to it. I could not use this card because it was sitting there with thousands of dollars on it, and I needed to just get rid of it. So for some people, maybe that's you cut it up. Maybe that's you freeze it in a block of ice, but I needed it away from me. So I gave my brother that because I trust him. Don't give your credit card to somebody you don't trust. but I trusted him to hold on to that and again, keep me accountable. The third accountability partner or partners I had were my parents because they allowed me to live at home rent-free. If I had to be paying rent while I was going through this, I really don't think I would be where I am today. That one is a major privilege that I realize that not everybody's in a position for that. But if you can go to a safe home or shelter where you don't have to pay exorbitant expenses, pick that option. The third tip for getting out of debt is a very simple one, but you need to total your debts. Something that I did was just avoid looking at anywhere that I owed money. I just didn't look at my loan accounts. I didn't look at my credit card account. I didn't look at my car loan balance. You have to look at these things, come to terms with them, write them down, total them. I put mine right by my door, so every time I left my room, I could see this is what you're dealing with. Even though it sucks, make it so prevalent in your life that you can't ignore it. But when you see it every day and when you are thinking about it and confronting it, it's hard to ignore it. So even though it's gonna be emotionally hard, you need to confront the fact that you have the debt, see the amount that you owe, and that's what you're working towards. The fourth piece of advice or fourth tip for paying off debt is to go easy on yourself. You're gonna slip up and that's okay, but I think the first couple times I slipped up, I really punished myself. I felt so much shame and it was an unproductive feeling because you already feel shame for having the debt. So slipping up and then feeling more shame is not gonna propel you to do better. I think that it really just hurt me more. So give yourself a bit of grace. And again, that's where those accountability partners come in. That's where those safeguards like not having credit cards come in so you don't slip up as much. But if you're paying off debt and there's a pair of jeans that look incredible on you, buy them. Get yourself a meal, get yourself a treat, some ice cream. Like, it's okay to be paying off debt and get a treat. Is it okay to be paying off debt and go on a $3,000, $10,000 vacation? No. Is it okay to be paying off debt and get a new $50,000 car? No. But if you're gonna spend 50 bucks, $100 on something that's gonna make you feel good and it's not gonna be detrimental to your living situation, if you can eat, if you can pay, insurance, do it. It's not the end of the world. As long as you stay on track and it's just a little motivator that once you're out of debt, you can do more of the things you want to do. My fifth tip is you have to work as much as you can. This is hard because working takes away sleep. It takes away routine and balance. It takes away social and family time. It takes away personal time. It takes away everything. When I tell you that working 12 to 15 hour days was the hardest thing I've ever done, I'm not kidding. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. All I did was work and it sucked. Dave Ramsey calls it a season. It's a season that you're working hard and the next season you're not. When I had $60,000, almost $70,000 of debt, I was only making $25,000 a year. How would you ever pay that off? And I get that I'm standing again from a point of privilege where I had a university degree, I wasn't paying rent, all those different things, but that doesn't change that I was still working as many hours as I possibly could. You have to be in a similar mindset of that. You have to get your income up. You have to work more, whatever it is. Sell your stuff, a side hustle, get another job, ask for more hours at your job, ask for a raise if it's due and you're owed that. Find a way to make more money. The sixth and final tip, which is setting a plan. These tips are not necessarily in order now that I'm thinking about it, but setting a plan involves making a budget that you stick to. Where is all your money going? You need to be accountable for where your money is, where it needs to be spent, what's an expense, what's a want. Like, you need to really walk through every single dollar. Dave Ramsey has an app. I didn't use it, but it's called Every Dollar app, but you can find budgeting really anywhere. You need to make a timeline where you're thinking, how long am I going to be working this hard? How long, if I stick to my budget, will it take to pay this off? And third is think about your emotional well-being. Think about, if I don't have a lot of time, where am I going to make time for sleep, to eat a healthy meal, to call my parents, to call my siblings, to call a friend? Even though you're working, above and beyond and you're exhausted, you have to make time for yourself and still other people and find a way to be emotionally well because it's going to be hard. Okay, my apologies. My camera died, so we're going to finalize this video on my phone. But basically, I wanted to kind of close and say, you are not alone. So many people have debt and it's so normalized in our society. And I'm sure at some point in my life, I'll go back into some form of debt. but I hope that I have set up enough self-resistance, enough self-understanding, and good money habits where over time I'm not in debt that I can't control and I can't be on top of. Something like a mortgage, I'm probably one day going to have, but I hope that it doesn't eat me alive and cause me all these different problems where I can barely survive. I hope that I've set myself up to move forward in my money journey and never go backwards where I'm out of control. Nobody's really going to be able to force you to pay off your debt or anything like that. You have to want this for yourself. And when I tell you that it's one of the top 5 best feelings I've ever felt to be out of debt and know that I can move on from that chapter of life, it's so rewarding and you're going to be so happy when you make it there. Find what your why is and push through that. And whether that be listening to Dave Ramsey, for me, I have some, pushback on Dave Ramsey, and maybe I'll talk about that one day, but find what helps you, find who can help you, find out how to help yourself, and get on the journey, because when you get to the end of it, you're going to be so happy, I swear. Owing other people money is stressful, but being in control of your income and being able to spend it and save it and invest it how you want is so rewarding. That is my debt journey, and I appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk about more money stuff in the future. So if you did enjoy, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.